In the depths of an uncharted asteroid belt, far from the watchful eyes of the galaxy, something extraordinary was taking shape. A massive, gleaming ship, unlike any other, slowly took form beneath the flickering lights of a hidden human base. This base, known only to a handful of the highest-ranking officials and scientists, had been a closely guarded secret for years. On the surface, nothing about it was remarkable. But beneath the surface, in a cavernous facility deep within the heart of the base, Earth's greatest minds had quietly worked day and night on a project so ambitious it seemed almost impossible. It was called Project Horizon, a bold effort to create a vessel capable of unimaginable power and resilience, far beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. Its design was sleek, its construction impeccable, and its capabilities were something no one had ever dreamed of. They called it the Resolve. The Resolve was not just a ship. It was a symbol of humanity's survival, an answer to an unseen and growing threat that loomed over the galaxy, a threat so vast and powerful that many thought humanity would never survive it. But Earth, ever resourceful and determined, had other plans. The ship's creation had been kept hidden, its purpose known only to those who were part of the select circle working on it. Its final mission would be one of cosmic importance, to protect humanity from the shadowy forces that threatened to destroy it. At the heart of this mission was Captain Eleanor Reed, a woman whose sharp mind and steady leadership had earned her the honor of commanding the Resolve. She was a product of years of training, a former military officer with a deep understanding of the galaxy's complex political landscape, and a scientist who understood the delicate balance between progress and peril. Alongside her were the finest engineers, scientists, and elite soldiers Earth could offer, each one specially chosen for their expertise, but none of them knew the full truth about the mission that awaited them. In fact, the crew had been told little more than their orders: to embark on a mission in deep space that could change the course of history. The crew was a mixture of eager faces and cautious minds. Some had their doubts. Others had questions. They dared not ask. They had trained for months, conducted simulations, and prepared for every possible scenario, but none of them knew exactly what their destination would be or what kind of threat they would face. The tension among them was palpable, but there was something else in the air, something electric. It was a mixture of excitement and fear, of curiosity and dread. As they gathered for their first briefing on board the Resolve, each of them felt the weight of the unknown pressing down on them. Whatever lay ahead, they knew one thing for certain: their lives would never be the same. Captain Reed stood in front of them, her eyes scanning each member of the crew. She could see the uncertainty in their faces, and she understood it. She felt it too. But she also knew the stakes. Whatever had prompted Earth to build such a ship, whatever threats they were preparing for, she couldn't let her crew dwell on the fear. They needed to be strong, to trust in the mission. As she spoke, her voice was steady, but there was a quiet urgency to it. "We are the last line of defense for humanity," she said, her gaze unwavering. "Whatever happens out there, we stand together. We protect Earth and we protect the future of our species." The ship's engines hummed to life for the first time, and the crew felt a subtle shift. The moment they had been training for had arrived. The Resolve was ready, and so were they. But even as the ship broke free from its hidden dock and moved into the endless void of space, a growing sense of unease spread through the crew. The deeper they ventured into the unknown, the more they wondered, what were they truly preparing for? And who, or what, was the enemy they were meant to face? As the stars twinkled in the distance, a cold silence fell over the crew. There was no turning back now. The mission had begun. But the question remained: would they discover the true reason for the Resolve's creation before it was too late? And would they be ready to confront the galaxy-shattering threat that awaited them in the dark reaches of space? Only time would tell. The Resolve was on its way, and the fate of humanity was now in their hands. As the Resolve drifted deeper into the vastness of space, a strange discovery was made. While exploring the ship's extensive archives, a member of the crew, Dr. Lucas Farron, a renowned historian and alien artifact expert, stumbled upon a hidden compartment. Inside it lay an ancient alien artifact, covered in strange symbols and glowing with an eerie, faint light. It had been carefully preserved, tucked away for reasons no one could understand. The object was unlike anything they had encountered before, and its mysterious nature sparked a sense of both awe and unease. After hours of careful analysis, Dr. Farron was able to decipher a portion of the ancient language, one that spoke of a prophecy. The artifact, once belonging to a long-extinct species that had once dominated the galaxy, detailed a terrifying prediction. It described a time when a force, vast and unstoppable, would rise from the shadows. This force, known only as the Unity, would return to the galaxy with a singular purpose: to eradicate all species that threatened its control. The records spoke of an alliance of powerful ancient civilizations, all working together to ensure the survival of this cosmic order. They had already wiped out countless species before, and humanity was next in line. The prophecy made it clear. Humanity's future depended on stopping this force. Captain Elena Reed stood over Dr. Farron's shoulder as he translated the final, haunting words. Her mind raced as the implications of the prophecy began to settle in. The Resolve, the ship they had entrusted with the fate of humanity, was not just meant to protect Earth. It had been built to confront a threat that was far beyond anything they could have imagined. A threat that had the power to wipe entire civilizations from existence. And now, humanity's greatest hope was to stop it before it was too late. The more the crew studied the artifact, the clearer it became that this enemy was not a single race, or even a single species. It was something far more complex, a vast and interconnected network of galactic powers working together to maintain a ruthless form of order. The artifact's details were chilling. The Unity operated in the shadows, quietly absorbing or destroying any species they deemed too powerful or independent. The galaxy, as they knew it, was a carefully controlled system, one where freedom was an illusion, and the truth was hidden beneath layers of secrecy and manipulation. As Captain Reed absorbed the information, her mind turned to their mission. The Resolve had been launched under the assumption that they were exploring new frontiers, searching for answers to the unknown. But the truth was far darker. Their mission wasn't just about exploration. It was about survival. They were not simply pioneers. They were the last defense against a galactic force bent on erasing them from existence. A deep sense of dread washed over Reed, but she knew there was no time to waste. She had to act, and she had to act quickly. She called a meeting with her senior officers. "We're not just facing a new enemy," she said, her voice steady but filled with an urgency that matched the growing tension on the ship. "We're up against an entire galaxy of powers united against us. They've been watching us, and they've marked us for destruction." Her crew listened in silence, the weight of her words sinking in. There was no denying it now. Humanity had become a target. The Resolve was humanity's last line of defense, and its mission had suddenly become much clearer and much more dangerous. The question now was, how would they fight an enemy that had already infiltrated the galaxy's deepest layers? How could a small crew, aboard a single ship, take on a network of powerful civilizations that spanned across the stars? The tension on the Resolve grew as the crew realized the magnitude of their task. Captain Reed was determined to uncover every possible piece of information about the Unity and the threat it posed. She knew they needed to understand their enemy before they could even begin to formulate a plan, but every step forward only seemed to uncover more questions. Who were the members of the Unity? How had they been operating in secret for so long? And why had humanity been singled out as their next target? As the crew delved deeper into the artifact's secrets, the gravity of their situation began to settle over them. The future of humanity was now in their hands, and time was running out. The unknown forces of the Unity were drawing closer with every passing moment, and the resolve was humanity's only hope. But there was a glimmer of hope, too. Humanity had always been resilient, always found a way to fight back. If they could just uncover the weaknesses of this powerful enemy, they might have a chance. But the truth was clear. The battle for survival had already begun, and only time would reveal whether they were truly ready for what lay ahead. As the resolve drifted further into uncharted space, a sense of unease settled over the crew. They had left behind the safety of known space, venturing into a part of the galaxy where no human had ever set foot. The vast emptiness of deep space was unsettling, and something about it seemed wrong. At first, the signs were small, strange readings on the ship's instruments, a flicker in the communication systems, and whispers of ghostly echoes through the ship's hull. But soon, the anomalies grew impossible to ignore. Unusual gravitational distortions appeared in their path, pulling the ship off course. Objects that should have been visible on their sensors simply vanished, only to reappear moments later in entirely different locations. It was as if the very fabric of space was being bent, manipulated, and twisted by an unseen force. The crew's growing anxiety was palpable. They had prepared for many challenges, but this was something beyond their understanding. They could no longer dismiss these occurrences as mere glitches or random malfunctions. Someone was out there, watching them. As the days passed, strange power surges began to disrupt the ship's systems, making everything, from navigation to communication, unstable. It was as though the very energy they relied on to stay alive was being siphoned away by some hidden hand. The crew worked tirelessly to keep the resolve operational, but with every passing hour, the tension mounted. No one spoke of it directly, but there was an unspoken agreement among the crew. Something was hunting them. One day, as they navigated through a particularly dense asteroid field, they intercepted a faint signal, a message not meant for them, but one they could not ignore. The transmission was encrypted, but with Dr. Farron's expertise, they were able to decrypt it. It was a conversation between two alien factions, speaking in hushed tones as if they feared being overheard. The words were fragmented, but the message was clear. The Unity was real. The Unity was coming. And they were not alone. The Unity was not just a myth or a legend. It was a galactic conglomerate of species bound together by a singular purpose: to ensure absolute control over the galaxy. The transmission revealed that the Unity had quietly infiltrated countless star systems, manipulating and dominating weaker species to prevent any of them from becoming a threat to their power. Their methods were ruthless, and their influence reached further than anyone could have imagined. This was no simple empire. It was a collective consciousness that moved in the shadows, maintaining balance through absolute control. They ensured no species could rise to challenge their dominance. As the crew pieced together the puzzle, a chilling realization settled in. The Unity had been watching humanity's rise with growing concern. Earth's newfound strength, its technological advances, and its rapidly expanding influence had made it a target. The crew of the Resolve was now carrying the only known means of defending humanity against this terrifying force. But what could a single ship do against a galactic network of power and influence? The cryptic transmission continued, hinting that the Unity was preparing for an invasion that would obliterate any species that stood in their way. The Resolve, still far from the edge of the galaxy, was now on a direct course for Earth. The invasion was not years away. It was imminent. The Unity's forces, hidden in the shadows of space, were moving closer with every passing day, and their preparations were already in motion. The more they uncovered, the more terrifying the situation became. The Unity's influence was far-reaching. They had already crippled entire fleets of other species who had dared to oppose them, and now humanity was next. But how? How could they stop something so vast, so powerful, and so deeply entrenched within the fabric of the galaxy itself? As the crew listened to the transmission, their thoughts raced. The Unity had the power to erase entire civilizations, and now their sights were set on Earth. The question was no longer if they would be attacked, but when. And when the time came, would humanity even stand a chance? Captain Reed gathered her senior officers, her expression grim as she relayed the new information. They had been operating under the assumption that they were simply exploring an unknown part of space. But now, the mission had changed. The crew was no longer just charting the stars. They were humanity's last hope, a fragile line of defense against a force so ancient and powerful that it could reduce the galaxy to ashes. As the Resolve continued its journey, the crew's fear grew, but so did their resolve. They would fight for their future. They had to. As the Resolve continued its journey toward Earth, the weight of the mission grew heavier with each passing day. The crew had learned that their task was no longer about exploration or survival. It was about defending humanity from a galactic force so vast and powerful that it threatened to erase their very existence. The Unity, an interconnected network of galactic civilizations, was moving closer, and their intentions were clear: to dominate or destroy any species that could challenge their control. In their quest to stop this terrifying force, Captain Elena Reed and her crew now found themselves standing at a precipice. How could humanity, a relatively young species in the grand scheme of the galaxy, hope to face such an overwhelming adversary? The crew spent days locked in tense strategy meetings, trying to piece together the fragments of information they had gathered. Each new discovery brought more questions, but no answers that offered hope. However, a breakthrough came when they uncovered a shocking revelation hidden within the ship's archives. The Resolve itself was not just a ship, it was humanity's ultimate weapon. Its true purpose had been kept from them, even from Captain Reed until now. The Resolve's core, a marvel of human engineering, was powered by quantum singularities, tiny, artificial black holes that had been harnessed to manipulate the fabric of space-time itself. The ship was not just a vessel, it was a force of nature, capable of creating weapons that defied imagination. The core could generate focused bursts of energy strong enough to alter the gravitational fields around entire star systems. It could warp space-time, making distant targets within an instant's reach, or creating massive bursts of energy capable of wiping out entire fleets. The Resolve was capable of doing what no ship in the galaxy had ever done before. It could fight the Unity on their terms. However, there was a catch. The power of the quantum singularities was immense, but using it came at a price, one that could have catastrophic consequences. The energy required to activate the ship's full weapon potential was beyond anything the crew had anticipated. It could destabilize entire regions of space, creating ripples through the galaxy that might tear apart the fabric of reality itself. The cost of unleashing such power could be the destruction of everything they held dear. Using the core's abilities could trigger a chain reaction that not only threatened the Unity, but also risked destabilizing the galaxy's balance. The Resolve could become an uncontrollable force, and humanity could be caught in the very destruction it sought to prevent. As the crew sat in a cold, dimly lit briefing room, the reality of their situation became clear. The Resolve was humanity's secret weapon, but it was also a double-edged sword. They had the power to fight back, but to use it meant they would be gambling not only with their own survival, but with the survival of the galaxy itself. Captain Reed, her brow furrowed, stared at the holographic map of the Unity's movements. Their forces were closing in. Time was running out. "We're looking at the biggest decision humanity has ever faced," Captain Reed said, her voice steady despite the fear swirling in the room. If we use the weapon, we may have a chance to stop the Unity. But we don't know what that will do to the galaxy. We don't know if we can control it. But one thing is certain. If we don't act, Earth will fall. The Unity won't stop until they've destroyed us. The crew sat in silence, each member wrestling with the consequences. Some of them wanted to risk it all. They had no choice, after all. The Unity was too powerful to confront without the full potential of the resolve. But others were more cautious, fearing the unknown repercussions of unleashing such destructive power. Would they be able to control it? Or would they be responsible for the collapse of everything they were trying to protect? Captain Reed knew the decision was hers to make. The weight of it pressed on her shoulders like an anchor. "We've trained for this. We've prepared for this moment," she said, looking each of her officers in the eye. "We can't afford to be afraid. We fight with everything we have, everything we are. If we fail together. But if we succeed, humanity will have a chance to survive. We may be small in the galaxy, but we've always found a way to survive against the odds. We will find a way." With the weight of humanity's future on their shoulders, the crew of the Resolve prepared for the final decision. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. They were no longer just explorers. They were warriors, ready to use the most powerful weapon ever created by human hands. But would it be enough to stop the Unity? Would they be able to control the destructive force they had unleashed? Or would it tear apart everything they were fighting to protect? As the countdown to battle began, they could only hope that their gamble would pay off. The Resolve drifted into the vast expanse of the ancient battlefield, the place where countless galactic wars had been fought and lost, leaving behind nothing but the scattered remnants of shattered ships and forgotten memories. The silence was unnerving, broken only by the quiet hum of the ship's systems. Captain Elena Reed stood at the helm, staring at the battlefield before them, knowing that they had arrived at a turning point in their mission. This was the first step in confronting the Unity, and she was prepared for a battle. But nothing could have prepared her for what they found. As they navigated the eerie silence of the battlefield, the crew began to notice something strange. No enemy ships had appeared. The Unity's fleet was nowhere to be seen, even though their intelligence had predicted an engagement at this very location. It was as though the enemy had vanished completely. A sense of unease spread through the crew as they scanned the derelict ships around them, each one a silent testament to the galactic wars of the past. The battlefield was littered with wreckage, the twisted remains of ships that had fought and fallen long before the Resolve's mission had even begun. Yet, something felt off. The absence of the Unity's forces didn't feel like victory. It felt like a trap. Then, as they ventured deeper into the battlefield, their scanners detected something large, an object unlike anything they had ever encountered before. It wasn't just a ship. It was something alive. The crew's pulses quickened as the Resolve's sensors pinpointed the source, a massive vessel drifting at the center of the graveyard. It wasn't just a warship. It was a hybrid, part machine, part biological organism, its surface pulsing with an eerie, living energy. The vessel seemed to breathe, its surface shifting and twitching as if it were alive. It was the Unity's flagship, and it wasn't like anything the crew had seen before. A living, breathing ship. The realization sent a wave of fear through the crew. Captain Reed ordered the crew to approach with caution. The ship's presence was suffocating, its very existence casting a shadow over the battlefield. The Resolve carefully maneuvered toward the flagship. But as they drew closer, a strange signal burst from the flagship's depths, something almost like a call, a message. It wasn't in any language the crew knew, yet somehow, it felt as though it were speaking directly to them. The message was not of words, but of intent, a collective force that seemed to reach into their minds, flooding them with a sense of both dread and inevitability. It was as though the Unity's very presence was being felt by every member of the crew, pressing against their thoughts like an invisible weight. With no other choice, Captain Reed authorized an away team to board the flagship. The crew entered the derelict ship, their footsteps echoing through the dark, damp corridors. The ship was a bizarre amalgamation of technology and organic matter. Metal walls lined with veins of glowing tendrils, rooms that pulsed and shifted like the inside of a living creature. The air inside was thick with the stench of decay, as though the ship had been abandoned for centuries. Yet, in every corner, there were signs of activity, as if the ship was still alive and waiting for something. As they moved deeper into the vessel, the crew uncovered unsettling truths. The Unity was not simply a galactic conglomerate of species as they had once thought. It was an ideology, a collective consciousness formed from countless races, bound together by a singular belief that true peace could only be achieved through absolute control. The Unity did not seek domination for power's sake. It believed that the only way to maintain harmony in the galaxy was to eliminate any force that could disrupt the delicate balance it had created. This belief, while rooted in their desire for peace, had turned into a tyranny, a system where free will was crushed and individuality erased. The Unity's central mind, the beating heart of this ideology, was housed somewhere within this living ship. It was a sentient entity, a mind that controlled the actions of every member of the Unity, ensuring their collective compliance. As the crew ventured further, they discovered the truth. To defeat the Unity, they would need to destroy its central mind. The Resolve's mission had become clear. They weren't just fighting against a race or a fleet, they were battling an entire collective consciousness, an ideology that stretched across the stars, determined to erase any who stood in its way. The flagship's secrets had opened their eyes to the true nature of their enemy. The Unity was not an external threat alone. It was a force that threatened to reshape the very nature of existence itself. To stop the Unity, the crew would need to destroy the heart of this ideology, to shatter the central mind that controlled it all. But even as they realized what must be done, a terrible truth began to settle in. The cost of such a battle would be high. To destroy the mind of the Unity would mean risking everything, not just their lives, but the very fabric of the galaxy itself. The crew now faced the ultimate test. Would they have the strength to carry out this mission, knowing the dangers it entailed? And if they succeeded, would they be able to survive the aftermath of such a world-altering decision? The answers remained uncertain, but one thing was clear. The fight for the galaxy's future had only just begun. As the crew of the Resolve gathered in the briefing room, a heavy silence hung in the air. The decision they now faced was unlike any they had encountered before. Captain Elena Reed stood before them, her gaze distant as she reviewed the options laid out before them. The Resolve had come so far, uncovered so many secrets, and endured the harshest trials. But now the stakes were higher than ever. They had learned the true nature of the Unity, the ideology of control, the collective consciousness that ruled across the galaxy. Now, with this knowledge in hand, Captain Reed was faced with a terrifying choice: to destroy the central hub of the Unity, effectively severing its control over the galaxy. But there was a catch. The Resolve's advanced technology, fueled by the quantum singularities that powered the ship, had the potential to destroy the central mind of the Unity. However, doing so would trigger a catastrophic chain reaction that would rip through the galaxy, collapsing entire star systems in its wake. The results would be irreversible, leaving an unknown number of innocent lives in peril. The question was no longer about if they could defeat the Unity, but at what cost. The crew was divided. Some argued that they had no choice. The Unity's grip on the galaxy was suffocating, and humanity's future, as well as the future of countless other species, was at stake. "We have the power to end this," Dr. Farron, the ship's lead scientist, said passionately. The Unity is not just a threat, it is a plague that has spread across the stars. If we don't stop it now, there will be no future left for anyone. We owe it to all those who have fallen to finish this once and for all. His voice was firm, his conviction clear. To him, the solution was simple: destroy the heart of the Unity and end its reign of terror. But not all the crew members shared his belief. Commander Jason Hayes, the ship's second-in-command, stood from his seat, his face tight with worry. And what about the lives we're about to sacrifice in the process? We've already seen the devastation the Unity leaves in its wake. How can we, as humans, become no better than them? We're talking about wiping out entire systems, families, innocent civilians. There has to be another way to bring them down, one that doesn't cost us our morality in the process. His words echoed in the room, and for a moment, the crew was quiet, reflecting on the gravity of his argument. Could they, in good conscience, use such destructive power? Was victory worth the destruction they would leave behind? Tensions flared as other crew members weighed in, each adding their voice to the heated debate. Some argued that the Unity's cruelty was so overwhelming that there was no time to consider alternatives. Others, like Lieutenant Mara Tanaka, the ship's strategist, insisted that a solution had to be found that spared as many lives as possible. "We're not just soldiers in a war. We're human beings," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "We can't let our desperation to survive make us into monsters. There has to be a way to dismantle the Unity without destroying the galaxy in the process." For hours, the crew debated, each side presenting their case. The argument grew more impassioned with every passing minute. But as the heated words filled the room, something unexpected happened. The debate shifted from a clash of opinions to a shared realization. As the discussions wore on, the crew's growing understanding became clear. What set them apart from the Unity, what made humanity worth fighting for, was not their advanced technology or superior weapons, but their ability to choose, to fight, for what was right, even when the odds seemed impossible. It was the strength of their collective will, the courage to stand together against oppression, that made them strong. In that moment, the room grew quiet once again. Captain Reed, standing at the front, felt a profound shift within herself. The crew, her crew, had not only debated the morality of their mission, they had united over the very essence of what it meant to be human. She felt the weight of their collective determination, their shared belief that humanity's greatest strength lay not in the power of their weapons, but in their ability to make choices that defined their humanity. "I understand the fear," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "We all know the consequences of what we're about to do. But we are not the Unity. We are not bound by ideology or control. We have the freedom to choose. And if that means risking everything to stop them, then we stand together, no matter the cost." The crew, though still torn, now stood united in their resolve. There was no easy answer, no simple way out of the nightmare they faced. But one thing was clear. Their fight was not just about survival. It was about preserving the very thing that made them human, their ability to choose their own destiny. In that moment, they realized that they were ready to face the ultimate test. The decision was theirs to make, and whatever the outcome, they would face it together. The final decision had been made. Captain Elena Reed stood at the heart of the resolve, her fingers trembling slightly as she placed them on the control panel. The ship's hum filled the room, the quiet buzz of its systems a stark contrast to the weight of the moment. The time had come to activate the core, one last effort to stop the Unity and end their reign of terror. The crew had made their choice. They would risk everything to sever the Unity's control over the galaxy. There would be no turning back. With a deep breath, Captain Reed gave the command. The Resolve's massive engines thrummed to life as the HFY core, powered by the quantum singularities, began to hum with unimaginable power. The ship's entire frame seemed to vibrate with the energy building within it. Outside, the flagship of the Unity, the living, breathing monstrosity that had haunted them for so long, floated in the distance. The flagship was their target, its massive form standing as the final symbol of oppression, its very existence the embodiment of everything humanity had fought against. The crew had no illusions about the consequences of what they were about to do. They all knew the cost, the chain reaction that would ripple through the galaxy, collapsing star systems and possibly altering the very fabric of reality itself. But there was no other choice. The Unity's mind had to be destroyed. With the final sequence initiated, the core's power surged, pulling all of the Resolve's energy into the singularity. The ship groaned under the immense strain as a blinding light filled the control room. For a moment, it felt as though time itself had stopped, and the universe held its breath. The tension was unbearable, and then, with an explosion that seemed to tear the very fabric of space apart, the core was unleashed. The shockwave rippled outward, tearing through the Unity's flagship with a force so overwhelming that it shattered the colossal ship in a flash of energy. The explosion sent tremors through space, distorting the very space-time around it. Stars flickered, planets trembled, and the galaxy seemed to shift as the network of control that the Unity had spent centuries weaving unraveled before their eyes. The explosion was a beacon, one of destruction, yes, but also of hope. The Unity's hold on the galaxy was shattered, and the oppressive grip that had bound the stars was broken, but the aftermath was chaos. As the Resolve floated in the wake of the explosion, the crew stared at the damage they had caused. The space around them was fractured, unstable. The galaxy was in turmoil. Some star systems were already slipping into collapse, the shockwave of the singularity reaching far beyond what they had predicted. The galaxy was now free, but the cost was high. In the midst of the chaos, Captain Reed felt a sense of both triumph and sorrow. The battle was won, but the future was uncertain. There was no denying the destruction that had followed in the wake of their victory. Yet even amidst the swirling chaos, something remarkable began to happen. The ripple effect of their actions was not all destruction. Across the galaxy, civilizations began to awaken. Without the Unity's controlling influence, long-oppressed species found the courage to rise up, to shake off the chains of fear and subjugation. The Resolve had done what it was meant to do. It had ignited a spark. Humanity, in its fight for survival, had not only preserved its own existence, but had become the catalyst for a new era. The galaxy was no longer a place ruled by a collective mind, but a vast expanse of untapped potential. Freedom was within reach. As the Resolve drifted further into the unknown, Captain Reed stood on the bridge, gazing out at the stars. The mission was complete, but her journey was far from over. The galaxy was now free from the Unity, but the true work was just beginning. The Resolve had planted the seeds for a new age, one where hope, unity, and compassion would take the place of oppression and control. It would be a long road ahead, but humanity had proven that even in the darkest of times, they had the strength to stand tall, to lead with integrity and compassion. They had defeated a force far greater than themselves, not with brute force or weapons of destruction, but with a resolve that had been forged in the face of impossible odds. Captain Reed knew that the future was uncertain, but she also knew one thing with certainty. Humanity had proven that they could rise to the challenge. The galaxy had been shaken to its core, but now it was time to rebuild. The first steps of a new dawn had been taken, and with them, a new chapter in the story of the galaxy was about to begin. It would be a story written by those who dared to hope, to dream, and to fight for a better future. The Resolve had made the ultimate sacrifice, but in doing so, it had sparked the beginning of something far greater, a galaxy united in the pursuit of freedom and peace.